contact with Stan Kroenke during this whole ordeal? What was it?
None, except his deposition. Other than that, nothing.
And was that a deposition by Zoom, or how did that work?
All depositions were by Zoom in this because of the COVID issues and because it's much more economical to do it.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on Stan?
None. I mean, look, you have to give the devil their due. He's been a very successful businessman. A lot of people attribute that to other than his own acumen, but there are a lot of people that have those advantages that don't do well. So he's been very successful at that. I certainly don't like the way he treated St. Louis, and those allegations were all in the petition. But it's a lawsuit, and it's a lawsuit based on fact and law. And I stick to that, and Stan Kroenke is not really on my mind at all in any manner. He's just a defendant in a lawsuit that we think wronged the plaintiffs.
Who makes the call on whether to take the settlement?
Clients always make the call, but they do it with the advice of their attorneys.
So did you see Tashara Jones, her tweet yesterday, where she said she was against the settlement, but wasn't she one of the clients?
You know what? I can't comment on what a client said.
Okay.
And I can't comment on the settlement process, okay, occurred during a mediation. And there's a statute in Missouri that says you cannot comment on what occurred during the mediation.
And your clients, though, you can tell me this, your clients would be the city, the county, and then the...
RSA.
Yeah, and those are the three that made the decision, on the advisement of...
As I said, I can't comment on
I
that.
understand. Explain this, and maybe you can't go specifically on this, but in the appeals process, it's really unpredictable. How long could it have gone on?
Well, I'm going to take a guess, just to run it through the state courts, okay? Easy 3 years with those types of difficult issues. Then you're going to get an appeal to the United States Supreme Court on the arbitration issue. That was a very big issue, the arbitration issue. The Supreme Court of the United States had denied the right to arbitration to the Rams and Kroenke twice in writs of certiorari. But that was a different Supreme Court. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was on it. Now they've been replaced by, I think Kavanaugh's new to it, and I think Amy Coney Barrett is new to it. So I don't know how that would have come out, but it definitely would have gone there as an appeal and not as a certiorari where they would have had to take the case.
And in the end, you didn't want to trust basically 12 strangers with this.
That's not true.
Okay.
We thought we had a very good jury case, okay? If you've tried enough jury trials, one thing you know, you can always lose. So your first risk is getting a verdict, okay? We evaluated that strongly in our favor. But there are a number, but you could still lose. I mean, Tom Brady lost yesterday, and Aaron Rodgers lost to San Francisco, and I don't know who people bet on. But just because there's an old saying in sports, and you know it well, that's why they play the game, right? That's what a jury trial is. That's why you play the game. Anything can happen in a jury trial. So that's just the first risk. The other risks are numerous legal issues, which we would hope and have, and many of them had been decided in the trial court in our favors. I think that most of them would have held up, but you never know when you go into the appellate level and into the Supreme Court level and the state courts for a number of reasons. Cases change, the law changes, the court and its views and its the people who are on the court making the decisions change. You new people all the time on those courts. You don't have a read on them like you do the old courts. The risks are tremendous just in the appeal, and then you could get through all of that. And then you got to face the Supreme Court on the arbitration issue. The other thing that I was worried about most was the COVID issue. When you're a plaintiff's lawyer on a contingency basis, you want two things. You want, number one, a court date that will stay. That's the most important thing, and you do everything to keep that. The second thing you want is to get to the trial with what I call a critical mass of defendants that you can collect on, and a critical mass of your claims. And we were doing it. But COVID, I mean, we wouldn't have gone to trial January 10th. You realize that, don't you? We wouldn't have had a jury. COVID. So.
Did that play a factor in, big factor?
In my mind, it was a factor because you have to understand how hard it is to get a jury in that case. We started, Judge McGraw did a marvelous job, and by the way, he was unfairly criticized in this case, and I want to make a statement about that. There were people that said he was just ruling in our favor. That's not true. The first time he ever ruled, he cut out many, many defendants for many of our claims. But we didn't complain about it. We still had our critical mass, and we disagreed with them.
Yeah.
We didn't like it. Going further, when we asked for punitive damages, he only gave us punitive damages against the NFL, the LAOC, which is the relocation committee, and Jones. He cut out, he let plenty of people I thought we should have gone. So he ruled against us plenty of times, and all we're interested in is getting to the trial date. When you appeal something, that you could get lost on appeal. Some judges in the appellate levels may say, this is an interesting issue, we're going to take it and we're going to hear it, and then you may lose your court date.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that was unjustified, any criticism of Judge McGraw.
I've talked to at least 10 lawyers in St. Louis, and every one of them said, you did an unbelievable job and you did the right thing. Let me ask some devil advocate questions.
Sure.
Do you understand that some people wanted blood and they wanted Stan on the stand?
Yeah. You can't get blood in a lawsuit. You can't plead, we want blood. It's very difficult to get Stan here, okay, because he's out of state, even though he's a party. I think that they would have been very, very pleased to see Stan on a large screen in the deposition that he gave and the answers he gave and the exhibits that were used. I think they would have been very pleased to see him. It's like watching a movie these days. And unfortunately, they didn't get to see it, and I get that. But
only you got to see it.
well, and me and several other lawyers and the NFL.
What was enjoyable about it?
Well, the answers he gave and the questions that were asked him. I really can't comment on what happened during those depositions. You can if parts were designated as confidential. I just don't remember what was designated and what was not designated. I will say this, if you look at the arguments that were public on the summary judgment and the punitive damages motions, and all that's public record. You can get the court reporter to write that out. That those were not made up. Those were real answers.
Was the team option, St. Louis getting another team, ever brought up in your negotiations?
No, and that's another thing. You can't file a lawsuit to get a team back. No, there's no way that this court can make the team come back to St. Louis. If you tried to, you'd be. If I had a grandson who was a lawyer, he'd be trying that case after he became a lawyer. I mean, it's just, there are certain things. The law is a funny thing. There are certain things that you can get under the law, and there's certain things that you can't. Blood and bringing the Rams back are something you can't get.
Again, another devil's advocate question from a guy who doesn't know anything about the law. Because your case was so good, why settle when you did? Why not wait to the actual 11th hour?
Well, just think, if you'd have waited 3 days longer, you had a case from Oakland come down where the federal court threw Oakland's case out. Now, it was a little different theory they were using, okay? But they threw Oakland's case out against the NFL. Second, you have the COVID issue. Are you going to be able to get a jury on January 10th? And if the courts issue an order saying we're closing down all civil litigation 2 or 3 days later, you're not talking about the courthouse steps being January 10th. You're talking about the courthouse steps in a year from now.
What about, not that you need vindication, but what about the experts who thought the process was a bad idea from the start, taking this case, and then again slamming it after the $790 million settlement?
I don't know who those experts are. I haven't seen an expert say that. I've seen a lot of talking heads say that have no background in law, no background in ever trying to settle a case. Just the negativism that started with this case by talking heads. I didn't see any lawyers come. I saw some lawyers saying, well, I don't know, and things like that. But I mean, the expert that I've read, Professor Rishi, thought it was great, and he totally backed it. He's the only expert that I've seen talk about it at all. You know, but just because people yap and shoot off their mouth doesn't mean they're an expert. And because you're a talking head and you have a following, I mean, I look at the people who panned this case in the beginning without any substance behind them. It really is cowards. I mean, they didn't know what we know, and they basically said, oh, gee, Mr. NFL, Mr. Kroenke, we are so sorry for mistreating you, and we shouldn't be going after you. And please bully me, and please take my girlfriend. And they were just cowards. You, on the other hand, Frank, other media persons, you were open to the idea. You never panned it. But a lot of talking heads just do it so people will have something to talk about.
When did you know you had them? When did you know you weren't just getting back the $16 million on the stadium expenses, that, hey, this was going to explode? There had to have been a moment or a time period where you thought, hey, we're going to win big.
When we filed the case, we never thought this was an $18 million case. We always thought it was going to be larger. I think I even remember talking to you one time, and you asking me, would you take $100 million? Would you take $200 million? And I said, well, I can't answer it, but obviously now you know the answer to that was no.
How about a level of satisfaction right now?
There are two levels of satisfaction. Number one, when you get older as a lawyer, okay, you start doing things because you're right. You really, I mean, if I didn't think we were right, if Ed Dowd and Jim Bennett didn't think we were right, we would never have been there, okay? And we proved ourselves in a large way that, yes, they paid us a lot of money to go away. So I guess they did something. Second, the level of satisfaction that I have is to see the response nationwide. the absolute positive response towards the case in the New York Times, the LA Times, and USA Today, every major media that tracked this. Here in St. Louis, you and the fellas down at the Post, and what makes me so happy about that is it put St. Louis back. It acknowledged St. Louis, it acknowledged Mayor Jones, it acknowledged Jim Shrewsbury, the RSA, it acknowledged the county executive. We became back on the map nationwide in a very, very positive manner. And I think that the best thing we can take from that is to keep the positive going, and that if we can, I think it'll be a great boon to this region. That's what I hope. We have this positive light on us now.
Is this precedent setting? Do you think other cities, I mean, nobody's gonna be in the exact same situation, but do you think you may have sent a message to the NFL about this, or?
This wasn't, our purpose was not to send a message. Our purpose was to win, and win big, and we did. I believe, and it would only be logical, that every other city that has any vision that they might have a relocation problem with the NFL is focused on St. Louis. And I believe that that's another great thing that happened. When we were an NFL team, we appeared on television, we were known, we were across, people saw us St. Louis. Well, now all these major cities that have NFL teams, they're focusing on St. Louis.